Howdy, everybody. I don't know if you noticed, but yesterday I missed my recording of Annabelle, A Ghostly Texas Tale. I was ready to do chapter 3, but got quite ill. And then today, I'm not feeling a whole lot better, but there's come a point where it's just, dang it, if I've committed to do something, I'm going to do it no matter how I feel. I even got to hear the story of David Goggins last weekend when I was on a trip. And I tell you what, his life is amazingly inspirational. Look up David Goggins. He was like a Navy SEAL who went through Hell Week like 3 times in one year. The only guy to live to tell about that. He went 3 times. All the hardship, all of that, but it's like how we use so little of our potential because we quit. But now I'm not saying you can't rest. That's a whole other topic. But as far as I can do this, even if I'm uncomfortable, even if I don't feel great. So here we go. Chapter 3 of Annabelle, A Ghostly Texas Tale. And how are you guys doing today? And yes, I'm stalling because I need to find my spot. So here we go. Chapter 3, Butterflies and Hidden Things. So I was smart today and I brought my glasses that I promptly dropped. But I'm learning that it's not a matter of making sure everything is perfect. It's a matter of getting stuff the heck done. So, Annabelle, A Ghostly Texas Tale, Chapter 3. Here we go. Kate was surprised the next morning to discover she was the last to wake. Happy sounds emanated from the kitchen where the kids dug into leftovers from the night before. Yay, she didn't have to fix breakfast. With the unaccustomed reprieve, she jumped at the opportunity to primp. For once, she felt rested and optimistic. In her suitcase, she located the white tank top with crochet edging Jansen loved and paired it with her favorite jeans. There now, with her hair falling in shiny auburn waves and a touch of makeup, she felt clean, presentable, and downright cute. Time to go hug and kiss the man who had made a good night's sleep possible. Cal's huge white pickup sat at the front of the house. As she once again passed under the chandelier, Kate heard voices rising from the basement and called a cheery, "Hi, babe." When he topped the stairs from the basement, the ashen look on Jansen's face made Kate stop cold. "What's wrong?" Jansen didn't answer. Cal mumbled something about getting some stuff out of his truck and strode toward the front door. "What?" Kate prompted. "By all rights, you and this house should have been blown to kingdom come yesterday." As Jansen explained the large leak in the gas line connected to the hot water heater, Kate went pale. With horror, she remembered the fiasco of striking match after match and her attempts to light the thing. "Couldn't you smell the gas?" "Well, how could I smell gas over the rest of the stench in the basement?" Kate responded with a bit more volume than she had intended. "The handle wasn't even shut off properly," Jansen continued. "I still can't figure out why the air was clear when we went down this morning. You could have died, Kate. So this is my fault. As I recall, you lit the thing and left it on overnight." Part of her wanted to stop arguing and give Jansen the hug and kiss she'd prepared, but when he rubbed his eyes and said, "Just, please, promise you'll leave these things to me from now on," in a painfully patient tone of voice, Kate lost it. "Don't talk to me like I'm Lily," she hissed. "I was trying to help, and I don't recall you noticing the leaking line. You could have blown us all up that first night." Immediately, she regretted her outburst when Jansen flinched as if punched in the gut. How she wanted him to respond, to fight back and justify her anger, but he just clenched his jaw and turned away with a pained grimace. For some reason, the defeated expression, the one she'd seen too often in the past year, scared Kate more than if he had struck her. At that moment, Cal returned with a large toolbox and a wide grin. "Aw, Jance, don't be too hard on the little lady," he addressed himself to Kate. "Darling, a gal as pretty as you can blow up my house anytime." But the jovial smile froze as Kate turned toward Cal with murder in her eyes. "The name's Kate." She took a step closer. "Not little woman, and not," she punctuated the word with a pointer finger to his chest, "darling." She gave Jansen a scathing look. "Guess I better kick off my shoes and get in the kitchen where I belong." Face hot with anger, Kate wheeled to exit the room. "Does she always smell like vanilla when she's angry?" Cal's teasing voice followed her as Kate opened the front door, then slammed it so hard some broken glass in the dining room window crashed onto the porch. "Sorry about that," Jansen replied, his voice trailing through the many broken windows of the old house. "Things are kind of strained right now." "She's a racehorse, Jance. The good ones always have plenty of ginger." A flush of rage caused Kate to clench her fists. "You smug, smart-aleck son of a..." She grumbled a few less savory titles. "I'll show you, Ginger." She looked toward the manufactured home and her shoulders slumped in defeat. She'd be yelling at the kids in no time if she showed up like this. Instead, Kate stomped and huffed toward the overgrown backyard. As she rounded the house, Kate saw Jansen slap Cal on the back and laugh. She tromped faster, not wanting to be seen. "Probably discussing whether I'd respond better to spurs or a riding crop," she muttered. She would have practically jogged in her angry rampage, but vines like grasping fingers were turning her stroll into an obstacle course. What was this? A walk in their new backyard or a jungle safari? "Ow!" Kate yelped as a thorn found its way through her thick jeans and she bent to detach herself. Her ankle was bleeding, but it was nothing serious. Suddenly, the silence engulfed her. Her ears strained for any sound, the drone of a bee, chirp of a bird, but nothing. It was as if the world continued to turn without her, but she had stepped out of time. Kate examined her surroundings. Flowers bloomed in brilliant profusion, crying out to be noticed. The air felt heavy, as if it hadn't been stirred in decades, like entering the fancy sitting room in Grandma's house that was only open on special occasions. Behind her, the vines and branches formed a deep green veil, obscuring the house and anything else but this drowsy, living canopy. The only sounds were her breath and racing heartbeat, life reduced to its most basic functions. She looked around with wide eyes, aware those trees had been growing inch by patient inch before she was born, and, more than likely, they would carry on when she was long gone. They were steady, reliable, and calming. A flit of color caught her eye. The largest butterfly she'd ever seen, vibrant in hues of rich purple and gold, hovered just out of reach, above flame-tipped leaves to her right. In silence, they studied each other. Finally, the purple brilliance landed on a flower close to Kate's hand. Cautiously, Kate placed her finger next to the flower. To her astonishment, the butterfly walked onto it, then sat, slowly opening and closing its wings. As if satisfied with its assessment, the butterfly rose and flew into a beam of sunlight, then turned back as if beckoning Kate to follow. Mesmerized, Kate obeyed. The butterfly's path kept her feet on a trail where the undergrowth was less thick, leading her around a flowering bush and across a thin band of smooth stones that Kate guessed might once have been a decorative stream. Her eyes were so focused on the stones below and the bushes that blocked her progress that when the path ended, it caught her off guard. Before her loomed what appeared to be an impenetrable wall of tangled vines that rose to disappear into the branches above. Intrigued, Kate explored to find the dimensions of this obstacle, discovering, after a scratch on her face and a close call with an enormous spider web, the obstruction was about 25 feet long. Further investigation revealed the vines formed a large rectangle. Okay, now she just had to know what was in there. She grasped a handful of vines and pulled with all her might. While intertwined, dense, and thick, the long cords were brittle and broke easily. Kate began to clear a small patch. After a couple minutes, she felt something cold and hard. It was wrought iron, similar to the entry gate. Manhandling another bunch of vines, Kate put her face close to the iron, but her own shadow shut off the light. All she could see was a deep green haziness that only heightened her curiosity. "What in the world?" she mumbled. Kate walked to her right, finding the middle of the short side of the rectangle. Perhaps if she created another hole, the added light would aid her investigation. She pulled and tugged, ignoring a broken nail and the trickle of sweat working its way down her back. The vines grew even more thick on this side, so Kate was close to giving up until she could return with the proper tools when, with a gasp, she found herself staring at a gate's latch. When the gate proved stubborn with rust, She gave the bolt a sharp kick with her foot, as she'd seen in Rollins' karate class. The gate released, and she forced it open just enough to slip through. Her foot crunched onto something that sounded like eggshells. She waited for her eyes to adjust to the dimness as a small patch of light fell on glimmering tile under her shoes. The thought of going to fetch a flashlight crossed Kate's mind, but she blew it off. For once, she would be the carefree child pushing the limits. As she stepped forward, the hush grew deeper and heavier, like entering a cave or tomb. With a chill of fear, she wondered if this was indeed some sort of family crypt. What a morbid thought on a bright summer morning. Annoyed by her childish imagination, Kate held her arms in front of her, though the dim glow reached no further than her elbows. Nothing. She groped overhead but felt nothing, even when she stretched on tiptoe. The footing felt firm enough, so she inched forward, her fingers groping in the darkness. She took a longer stride forward, her fingers groping, meeting no resistance. So far, so good. As she gathered her courage for another forward plunge, a glimmer of brilliant color drew her eyes to the hole where she had first broken through the vines. The butterfly she'd seen before landed on a leaf, its wings opening and closing. A soft coolness, like a breath, moved along the exposed skin on Kate's arms and face. As the chill ran down her body, she heard a whispered, "Stop." Kate leapt in fright and stumbled, landing on her backside as bits of flooring scattered. She froze as the sound of echoes, like sonar, probed a hard surface several feet below. For one eternal second, she wavered between terror and curiosity. To run out or to discover? "Oh, come on," Kate grumbled, probably more to fear from sitting on some unseen critter than from imagined voices. Thus Kate gritted her teeth and patted the ground, gingerly exploring the surface of leaves and branches on cracked tile until, a mere 6 inches from her shoes, it fell away into thin air. Her gasp sounded muffled against the heavy air. Hands shaking, Kate retreated, inch by careful inch, to the promise of sunlight where she had entered. With a determined gulp of air she hoped would fill her with courage, Kate gripped a mass of vines and pulled. Whether due to fear-infused super strength or just super dead, dry vines, Kate landed once more on her backside, this time with a mass of dusty vines on top of her. She blinked in sudden, blinding light and hopped up, shoving away woven vines that looked for one terrifying moment like a nest of intertwined snakes. Heart-pounding, Kate kicked away the pile and turned. "Oh, my God," she breathed. Rays of piercing light illuminated what appeared to be an unearthed Roman bath, complete with graceful columns and stone benches. But Kate's eyes were fixed on the yawning void inches from where she had fallen earlier. She crept closer on trembling knees and peered down to still-shadowed depths, the deepest portion of a vast bathing pool, the bottom of which was covered with mounds of debris. But with her imagination on red alert, the mounds resembled a lumpy graveyard waiting for a bony hand to... One of the mounds shook. A growl reverberated in the dimness. Kate shrieked and scurried back out into the blessed sunshine. A little bit tense. Chapter 4, Discoveries. Kate's attempt to slip into the kitchen and grab the flashlight unnoticed was foiled when Jansen peeked from under the kitchen sink. "What happened to you? You're white as a sheet." Jansen came closer to inspect her dirty, scratched appearance, pulling a web and twigs from her hair. I found something out back," Kate stammered. "It's, ah!" She swatted away a spider on her arm. "Just come see." "Well," Jansen wiped his hands on an already grimy hand towel. "Gotta let this glue dry anyway." Soon, armed with hatchets and flashlights, Jansen and Cal followed Kate toward her vine-covered mystery. With just a couple well-aimed strokes, the men widened the opening around the gated entrance. As sunlight flooded the enclosure, Jansen gave a low whistle accompanied by Cal's, "I'll be damned." Kate stepped forward, emboldened by the men's presence, but Cal put out an arm to block her path. Best to let the dust settle a minute. Both men aimed their flashlights into the gloom. "You know," Jansen mused, Mom mentioned once how they baptized a whole slew of folks way back when a traveling preacher came through. I assumed they used a nearby creek or pond, but I'll bet they used this. Cal broke off a vine and tossed it toward the empty pool's edge. Kate yelped and jumped toward Jansen when a snake slithered across the opening and disappeared into the grass. Just a gopher snake, Cal informed as he yanked another handful of vines away. Good thing he's been around to keep the rats down. Jansen took a step inside the enclosure and crouched down, shining his flashlight on Kate's clear footprints. You came in? Kate nodded, inwardly cringing at the thought of snakes and rats in the darkness. The beam of Jansen's flashlight traced Kate's scuffling prints until it shone on the cleared debris at Pool's edge, where her bum had landed. Did you fall? Jansen asked. Kinda. Luckily you didn't fall in this thing and break your neck, Jansen muttered. Cal gave Jansen's back a good-natured smack. Probably a nest of snakes down there. They would have made for a soft landing. Kate refused to shudder at those words. Instead, she crossed her arms and addressed Jansen. I need to get back to the kids. Are you going to work on this now? Jansen aimed his light higher, letting out a quiet whistle as vine-covered columns and a tiled ceiling came into view. Don't think I can resist. What do you think, Cal? I'm in an Indiana Jones mood if you are. Sounds good. Kate turned away. I'll tell Rollins to grab some work gloves and join you. Considering the fact Cal probably assumed Kate had a death wish since she'd almost blown up the house, Kate held her tongue about the whisper that prevented her plunge into the empty pool. Better not get the rumor started the new filly at the old Pettigo place heard voices in the dark. Just a couple hours later, Kate gaped in awe at what the men's labors had accomplished. Dappled sunlight filtered in the pool house, through vines that now draped decoratively here and there, a vast improvement over its former bat cave-like facade. The bottom of the pool now bore tidy piles of who knew what that were ready for removal. Now that the pool area had been opened up, it still felt like a mausoleum, but it was at least a ventilated mausoleum. Rollins was sweeping rubbish into piles between the pillars, while Cal and Jansen inspected cracks in the tiled walls. You missed it, Kate, Cal said. Rollins got acquainted with the nest of coons, didn't you? Rollins' eyes were wide, almost childlike, as he put a hand to his chest. God, I thought that Mama was going to eat me. Had no idea raccoons were so mean. That explains the growl I heard earlier. Kate took a cautious step closer to the edge of the pool, where she had almost toppled a few short hours before. You heard something growling down here? Rollins gaped up at Kate. Geez, Mom, thanks for the heads up. That would have spoiled all the fun, Cal drawled. Never seen a city slicker jump so high. Rollins pointed a push broom toward Cal. Yeah, and thanks for all the help. You up there splitting a gut laughing while I was about to be shredded? Kate's heart warmed to hear Rollins play along. From the look of things, Cal was going to be around a lot. Well, if he could help bring Rollins out of his months-long funk, she'd be happy to put up with the cowboy's macho attitude. So, raccoons, huh? But that was no explanation for the whisper she'd heard. The memory caused the hairs on her arms to once more stand at attention. She peered down into the still shadowed depths to view the deep end of the pool a good 10 feet below. Not a pleasant thought to fall into that, sight unseen. Her eyes trailed up toward the shallow end where gaps in the tile revealed concrete beneath the sloped floor. There was some sort of design she couldn't make out, so Kate walked around the long edge for a better vantage point. Just then, the setting sun won its fight to pierce the heavy canopy of trailing limbs in the yard, its rays falling directly on the center of the shallow end. There, partially hidden by a pile of leaves, was an intricate tile design, a large P encircled by a geometric circle of gold and navy blue tiles that glimmered in the golden light like gems scattered on a field of battle. Oh my, Kate exclaimed. What a work of art. Yep, Jansen replied. Old Jed was pretty proud of his name. Too bad such beauty has been buried and forgotten for so long. A little neglect and something priceless turns into junk. Cal stood up and gazed around. Man, if these walls could speak. Doesn't make sense that something like this was just overgrown and forgotten. It's totally creepy, Rollins grumbled. Saw some cool lizards, though. For now, we'll clear out these piles and padlock the gate, Jansen stated as he wiped an arm across his forehead. Until it's fixed, this thing is a hazard. For safety, Jansen put a new padlock on the gate to the pool, and the kids were told it was off limits until repaired. Of course, that action simply heightened the mystery. 2 months later. Kate breezed in the back door to the manufactured home feeling refreshed after her morning walk with Allie, but her outlook was still apprehensive. Even after several social occasions and a couple months of feverish activity on the old house, she still missed her home and friends in California. Now, Jansen would be gone for 2 weeks to oversee construction on a subdivision back in California, an opportunity he couldn't pass up, with the Pettigo Manor bills mounting. In fact, all but Lily would be abandoning her for their first day at school. Of course, right across the road was Widow Haney's farm that had become a second home for the kids, who had a standing invitation to swim in her pond or play in her hay barn, and Allie lived right around the corner. Besides, Cal's ranch was only 5 miles away, a short distance in this wide country. Jansen had hired his old friend to oversee the renovation, so Cal would be coming and going every day. But none of them would be around in the dreaded quiet hours of night. Ever since the incident in the pool house, Kate had been a bit jumpy. On top of that, Widow Haney had, just yesterday, confided a few of the rumors that circulated about the old Pettigo place. Kate could have laughed them off. Most were just the far-fetched product of drunken teenagers clamoring into the house on a dare, but Ima Haney's own story had struck a chord of familiarity. Kate shook herself back to reality. Time to get the morning going, or Jansen would miss his flight and the kids would miss the bus. Liam was up with a bound of excitement. She had no worries about her confident little superhero in regards to school. He had already made several friends at church and was developing a busy social calendar. Rollins, on the other hand, had remained a bit of an outcast, partly due to his standoffish attitude and partly, Kate had to admit, due to a sense of distrust toward newcomers that still prevailed in some pockets of their new hometown. He developed a following among some of the teen girls since he was the tall, good-looking new kid in town, but most of the young men made fun of his baggy skater clothing and city ways. When Kate said, "Time to get up," Rollins simply growled and pulled the pillow onto his head. Kate peeked into the girls' room. As usual, Phoenix wasn't in her own bed, but Kate knew just where to find her. Lily's tangle of curls and one bare foot poked from under her knotted bedclothes. Kate shut the door quietly. Let the little dynamo sleep. Back in the master bedroom, where the king-sized mattress swallowed the limited floor space, Kate located her oldest daughter, wrapped in the comforter from her bed, and pressed close to Jansen's side. How would Phoenix handle Jansen's absence for 2 whole weeks? For that matter, how would she handle school? She'd become a frequent visitor at Allie's place, helping to care for the animals and building a special bond with an orphaned baby raccoon. But most of the time she had simply played in the still overgrown garden in the back of the house. Kate was afraid Phoenix, with her red curls and slightly plump physique, would be a prime target for teasing. But Jansen thought the regular routine and playing with children her own age would bring their oldest daughter out of her shell. Kate hoped, rather than believed, he was right. It came as somewhat of a shock when the 45 minutes of chaos ended. The kids roared away on the bus, and Jansen pulled away looking handsome in trim khakis and his brown leather jacket. She envied his return to civilization. Kate had to convince herself she'd been looking forward to this moment. Finally, she could do something she'd been waiting to do since she had first set eyes on Pettigo Manor. Wiring and pipes were new, rotten boards were replaced, the foundation was level, and even the sagging balcony was no longer a lopsided grin. The house was still an eyesore, but it was evolving into a well-built eyesore. So, armed with ammonia, rags, and brushes sufficient to clean the Titanic, Kate rolled up her sleeves, put on Jansen's Yankees ball cap, toted a small DVD player to occupy Lily, and sent to work. She opened every window in the house before she started, but after 2 hours, it seemed she'd done nothing more than work at more dust and a healthy appetite. For a while, Lily tried to help, but when it was obvious real work was involved, she opted for the DVD babysitter. Kate scrubbed, accompanied by the sound of Lily singing along with a mermaid and a rebellious lion cub. But suddenly, in the middle of scrubbing out the kitchen cabinets, Kate realized it had been several minutes since she'd heard her daughter's lisped accompaniment. Kate dashed through the house, calling her daughter's name. She wasn't in any of the closets. The door to the basement was still locked, thank goodness, so maybe she'd escaped the dust and gone outside. With an effort, Kate suppressed her panic. "Lily!" she called out the front of the house as her eyes scanned the grounds for any sign of movement. She called again as she moved toward the backyard. Please, God, not the pool house. She opened her mouth for another shout, but stopped, straining her ears. Was that a child's voice? She rushed in the direction of the sound, dismayed to find her feet leading toward the tangled backyard jungle. The singing grew louder. "What for the bear thethidith, the thimble bear thethidith," Kate sighed with relief. Obviously, Lily was not in danger. Her voice was content, happy, and carefree. Kate stopped to soak in the sound. For a moment, the carefree childhood joy lifted her spirits. The sun's rays sparkled on dew-kissed leaves as birds chattered and hopped in the bushes. Kate took a deep breath as her pounding heart began to slow. These were the moments that made life worth living. Lily was talking now, carrying on a conversation with an imaginary friend. Kate moved closer, not wanting to ruin the moment. She peeked through the leaves to spy Lily, happily chattering away, surrounded by tiny beams of light that danced with the movement of a soft breeze through the trees. A few feet away, Winston, their spoiled mutt, lay with all four paws splayed in the air as a brilliant butterfly flitted above him. "Okay, Belle, sing your song," Lily requested. Kate giggled at the effect of her daughter's lisp as Lily reached for another daisy to add to the small mound of bright flowers in front of her. Sunlight glinted off the shiny head as she nodded in time to the imagined music and started twisting two of the flower stems together. Suddenly, Lily threw down the flowers in frustration. "It's not like yours," she exclaimed and crossed her plump little arms with stubborn anger. "I can't wade." Surely that was a mom's cue to come to the rescue on this lazy morning. However, the greeting for Lily froze in Kate's throat. Were her eyes playing tricks on her? Could it be the wind, blowing only on the spot where the daisies lay? 1, 2, 3, Lily counted as the flowers leapt into her hand as if attached to invisible strings. Lily started carefully laying the stems, one to the middle, in faltering braid formation, just as Winston started kicking his hind legs as if enjoying a satisfying scratch. Lily began singing again. "We were sailing along on Moonlight Bay. All the Christmas bells were ringing." Kate grasped the tree trunk for support as the scene from Widow Haney's kitchen the night before played through her mind. The children's voices wafting through the screen door, the scent of Ima's fresh, crusty biscuits making her mouth water, the slight smell of pine-sol scrubbed cabinets in a lovely pale butter shade, her 70-something friend sitting across the square, cloth-covered table, clad in a bright, homemade something between a dress and a nightgown. Ima's voice, a soothing blend of Texas and her Kentucky hillbilly roots, had droned on. I was so lonely. Clint had been gone for about 6 months, and everywhere I went in this old place, I felt he was going to be there like always, but he never was. I walked across the road, drawn to that old Pettigo place. Maybe I thought it looked as lonely as I felt. Ima had cackled on as Kate spread butter on the biscuit in her hand and watched with satisfaction as it melted into the fluffy layers. "Anyways," Ima had continued, "I sat on that old porch in that creak and swing, rocking back and forth for hours and crying for the first time since Clint died. Finally, the sun started to set and I began to get chilled. As I stood to go, I heard a child singing. We raised 8 young'uns, so children singing is just about my favorite sound in the world. How I missed it now they're all growed and gone. But I didn't think it was safe for a child to be there with night coming on, so I thought I'd make sure they got home safe and all. The singing sounded like it was coming from inside the house, so I peeked in a few windows and tried a few doors, but they was all locked. Whoever it was, they sounded happy enough, singing about moonlight and Christmas bells, but the sun was gone, and I was worried, so I walked around the house calling, 'Hello, it's Miss Haney.' Time to get home. The singing stopped. I figured I'd scared him away, so I started on home myself. I'd never been one given to fancies, but I sure felt watched as I stepped onto that drive. Now you gotta remember, I was plumb wore out with grief, and I've thought many a time I was well nigh losing my mind. I was just in the middle of that circle of grass when I turned round and saw a little girl standing on that crooked balcony, her little blonde head just barely reaching the rail. I shouted up to her, "You come on down from there before you get yourself hurt." Do you know what that little bugger did? She peeked under that crooked rail and blew me a kiss. Next thing I knew, she is gone, just faded like a rainbow when the sun goes behind a cloud. Lots of folks are scared of that place, but I'm here to tell you it's blessed. I just figured God sent me a kiss from an angel when he knew I needed it most. Kate had laughed and dismissed Ima's story as the product of fatigue and grief, but now, watching Lily braid daisies, which she'd never done, as Winston enjoyed an apparent belly scratch from an unseen hand, the tale took on new merit. "Lily," Kate tried to keep the panic out of her voice, "ready to eat?" Lily looked up from her daisies with a smile. "Look what I can do." Kate's heart thumped with relief as Lily ran closer, proudly displaying the beginnings of her daisy chain. "Can Belle eat with us?" Kate forced a nervous laugh. "So, does she have a bright yellow dress and hang out with the beast? That guy'll have to watch his manners." Lily rolled her eyes. "Not that Belle, my friend." Her brown eyes scanned the clearing until she sighed with disappointment. "You scared her away." Kate couldn't help but cast a nervous glance over her shoulder as she guided her chattering daughter into the house. That's the end of chapter 4. Tomorrow we will read chapter 5, Stormy Weather. You guys stay tuned.